Hey everybody, it's Thursday morning and I just got down here and got all the lights on. Just going to do an impromptu little video here, so sorry about all the glare and everything. I didn't really set up or prepare for this. But my native tank has been on my mind today. It's a little too hot for me to go out and work. So I'm thinking I might spend some time tinkering with this tank today, maybe getting some of these fish out of here. I don't know. But I shot a video recently where I talked about this tank. I said I'd very definitively made a decision on what this tank was going to become eventually. But my longtime viewers ought to know that whenever I definitively make a decision about something, that's always subject to change as time goes on and new information presents itself, etc. And after shooting the video and talking about my plans for the tank, which basically entailed having it fully planted and having lots of small schooling fish swimming around in it, I got some feedback from viewers, as I expected and wanted. And a few people were really disappointed, and I feel really bad about that. Some people basically said that this tank here is the only reason they watch my channel, which I'm not sure whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. But I feel like if I just did away with this tank, there's at least a handful of people out there that would, feel like the one thing that they like about this is just gone now. And not that I care so much about the number of views I would lose in those circumstances. Literally, if I've got a few people that are watching a few videos a month, that's not a lot of views I'm going to be losing. But I feel bad in the sense, like, I know how much it feels like to get your favorite TV show canceled or something like that. It's just like this emptiness you feel when it's gone. And that's the part that I feel a little guilty about, is just sort of taking this away. Plus, I really enjoy it too. I always like having some sort of native type tank going. My waterfall tank is sort of that. It kind of gives the appearance of my outdoor surroundings. If I go out pretty boy or even just walking in the stream across the street, I can see scenes very reminiscent of what my waterfall tank looks like, and that's the whole purpose of it. It was meant to just sort of remind me of my natural outdoor surroundings, so when it's cold, it's wintertime, or whenever, I can come down here in the basement and basically feel like I'm out at the reservoir to a tiny extent. But that tank only has a few native fish in it. I wound up putting a gourami in there, and now it's got a bunch of guppies in there. And while I really like that tank a lot, and I spend a lot of time enjoying it, especially those guppies, it's not a native tank, and I don't really feel like it's a native tank. This, to me, feels like a native tank, even though it's not truly a native tank. It does have some plecos in there, and then I've got that spotted tilapia that hangs out at the far end of the tank. But otherwise, the vast majority of the fish in this tank are native to at least the east coast of the United States, if not here immediately. I don't believe these shiners that are in here are native to any of my local waters here. They might be native to Maryland somewhere, but I don't think they're shiners in any of the local waters that I fish in. At least I've never caught anything that looked like a shiner. At any rate, I was thinking this morning that instead of just doing away with this tank and just changing it over to yet another tropical tank that, in all reality, would be very similar to my other tropical tanks, I thought that I could keep this a native tank. I could just go smaller. I can get rid of all these large fish, all these big creek chubs and all these larger sunfish, and I could stock the tank with a large school of rosy-side dace. I can get those little Notropis species, whatever they are. They look like black-nosed dace. We can just call them black-nosed dace for lack of the actual name. If you actually look up the different Notropis species, there's about 50 of them that look almost identical. And they all, like, they're that little tiny minnow with a dark line down the side, and, it may or may not wrap around the front, or it may or may not extend along the tail fin or whatever. But those little brown striped minnows, those little rosy side dace, I could have schools of those swimming around in here. We have Gambusia around here, which is a mosquito fish. It's a very close, you can think about them as a very boring guppy. They look and behave just like guppies. They just don't have any color. They're just sort of like a grayish little silver fish. Interesting, but not very attractive and colorful. Most of the native fish around here are not particularly colorful. These sunfish are probably the most colorful fish around here, with the exception possibly of a yellow perch. But that's an option, you know. I can do that. I can put some darters on the bottom. I can put a bunch of little sculpins in there, maybe put some crayfish in there. I think the issue I was having with the crayfish before was not coming from the other crayfish or bottom dwellers. I think it was these big creek chubs. As soon as these creek chubs got any kind of size to them at all, they just started tearing those crayfish apart. Even when they couldn't eat the crayfish whole, they could rip their legs off and rip their claws off and tear chunks out of their shell. And I watched some crayfish get devoured by those creek chubs. And so that's when I stopped putting crayfish in this tank. There's no point in it. You know, I'm already feeding the creek chubs. I don't need to feed them live crayfish in a, you know, such a brutal fashion like that. But without the creek chubs in here, if all I have is small minnows, then the only thing I'd really have to worry about is maybe an occasional crayfish catching the odd fish or something like that. But otherwise, it would be a very functional community tank where people wouldn't be preying on each other. People in this case, of course, being the fish. So, I don't know. Again, I'm kind of back up on the fence about what I want to do with this tank. I really do like having a native tank. You know, even if it's a faux native tank or a pseudo-native tank, it's not a true biotope by any means. I don't care about that. But I would feel a loss if I didn't have this tank in here. I'm really tired of this tank, but that doesn't mean I can't do something else similar, and I can't keep it native and just do something else. I've had people suggest I raise bass in here. Again, I don't want to do something where I'm going to put a fish in here that is eventually in a year going to have to get fished back out. And, you know, I want to set this tank up so it's a nice community tank. I thought I'd done that before, but that was before I realized these creek chubs get enormous and these shiners actually get really big too. Eventually, these shiners can get up to about 10 or 11 inches. I doubt they would ever achieve that size in an aquarium like this, but, you know, out in the Great Lakes, you catch those shiners and they're huge. So, again, just kind of thinking out loud, throwing some ideas out there, but this morning my idea was going towards the sticking with the natives, but going with the smaller natives. And I'm sure, you know, I'm no expert of species around here, as some viewers of my Bass Pro Shops video pointed out that I was incorrectly identifying fish, and, you know, someone suggested I need to learn the names of all these fish, and I asked why. Am I going to get tested on it? Like, I don't care if I know the names of all these fish. It's just academic to me. I'd like to be able to accurately tell people this is this or that's that. But I don't care if if I catch some small little minnow and it's just a small minnow to me. I don't really care whether I know its name or not. So there's probably lots of little fish around here that I don't even know exist, that I've never bothered to catch or noticed, you know. So maybe I'll go on out the creek and I'll take my little dip net and my waders and walk around, and who knows what I might come across out there. Of course, the downside, you know, not knowing the species, I might catch this little fish only to find out that, you know, 6 months from now, it turned out to be not so little after all. There's a lot of people out there that were sold, you know, those little Chinese algae eaters for their 10-gallon tank, and a lot of people were sold those little common plecos for their 10-gallon tank, and they find out very quickly that those little fish grow fast. So I do run that risk, you know, if I'm just out catching some small fish I find, you know, swimming around on the bottom, or maybe a little school of little fish. You know, when I was out fishing on the kayak yesterday, I saw lots of schools of little fish, but they were schools of newly spawned bass. You know, if I'd have scooped up a net full of them and brought 20 of them back to the house, that would have been interesting. That would have been some rapid growth, and, you know, by next spring, we'd be letting, you know, 20 huge bass go. So anyway, I'm going to get my day started. I just wanted to take a few minutes to chat about the tank here and throw some more ideas out there. You know, I'll try to refrain from definitively saying I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. But I can say definitively I'm tired of this tank like this. I'm tired of just seeing these creek chubs in here every day. These sunfish just aren't doing it for me. That's a possibility. I could always go with what I originally wanted to do when I caught these sunfish. My goal was actually to catch a bunch of little sunfish. And I mean, like, you know, little sunfish, and have 15 or 20 little dime-size or quarter-size sunfish swimming around in there in the school. And I wound up catching these sunfish that are just about pan-size already. And, you know, it's like shooting myself in the foot. I got a bunch of those big shiners out of there, but then I put a bunch of big sunfish right back in. And I've probably got a higher bio load now than I did before I, you know, sorted some of the fish out of the tank. So something's got to give, something's got to go. I'm getting really tired of it. Like I said in a previous video, I'm not necessarily going to record all of this. If I do it, it'll probably be just a spur of the moment. I'll just grab a net and start doing it or something. I don't know. We'll see. But make sure you're subscribed, and then that way you won't miss, whatever I wind up doing or whatever this tank winds up becoming. And then, of course, I've got all the other, tanks around here in my fish room. And, of course, you don't want to miss anything that's going to happen with any of those. So subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That way you'll get notified when I do post. I post a lot, so that might get annoying to some people, but other people like to know when I post. So if you're subscribed, you hit that notification bell, you'll get all that. So don't forget, this one here is my 125-gallon native tank for now, and probably in the future, but we'll see. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.